Hello and welcome to our next tutorial video where we are exploring how to take different Excel objects and export them over to a Word document. So in our last video we took one Excel chart and we took it and copied it over to a Word document. In today's video we are going to take multiple Excel charts and copy those charts over to a Word application, and we're going to make sure that each chart is on its own individual page. So it's going to be broken into two sections. So the first one, we're going to assume that all of our charts exist on a single worksheet. And then in the next section, we're going to assume that we have multiple charts across the entire workbook. Now, I am going to give a forewarning to this video. We are going to find, when it comes to copying stuff over from over from Excel to Word, things are highly unstable. We have to do, in some cases, multiple workarounds in order to make sure our script works. Now, what I cannot guarantee is the first time I run my scripts that they will run correctly. I might have to rerun them, and this is sometimes just boils down to the fact that this process can be highly unstable. But I will show you tricks that we can implement to at least reduce the chance of that happening. But I cannot guarantee it will not happen when we do this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into our VBA editor. So to get there, we're going to go up to our ribbon bar to the developer tab. And then next, we're going to go over to the far left to the Visual Basic icon and click it. And then from here, we need to insert a new module. So what you're going to do is you're going to click anywhere in here within your Project Explorer. And then you're going to go to Insert, and then Module. Now I already have a module, so I'm not going to create another one. Now from here, we have to do one additional step before we can actually start writing our script. And that additional step is enabling an object library that will allow us to basically manipulate different Word objects, and then also we get some added benefits that are related to IntelliSense. That object library is the Microsoft Word Object Library. I know, surprising, you probably couldn't guess that. To enable that library, we're going to go up to our command bar of our VBA editor. We're going to click the Tools section, and then we're going to go down to References. And from here, because I've used this library before, it is at the top for me. But if you're new to using this library, you will not see it at the top. You just need to scroll down to M for Microsoft, and then you want to go down to the W section. So Microsoft Word Object Library, it is in alphabetical order, so don't worry, you just got to go in alphabetical order. I'm going to check this box, and when I check it, it will be enabled. You might see a different number here. So I'm on the latest version of Office, so I have the latest version of the object library. However, if you're on an earlier version of Office, so like 2013 or 2010, you will see a different number. It's okay. Everything we're doing in today's video, it will all work across the different versions. So we're going to go and click OK. And from here, we can now start writing our script. So I'm going to create a new subroutine. I'm going to call it Export Chart to Word. And then I'm going to do single worksheet. Put my brackets N sub. And then I'm going to declare my Word object variables. The first one that I'm going to declare is going to be my Word app. And then this is going to house my Word application object. So it's actually going to be the object that is my Word application. Now, by default, just because I have an application doesn't mean I have a document in that application. So I need to create a document variable. So I'm going to create a Word doc variable, and then this is going to house a Word document. So again, in Excel, we have an application, but in our application, we have workbooks. But in Word, they have documents. And so we can think of a document like a workbook. So you can have multiple documents. So now that I've done that, I'm going to create one more variable, but that's related to Excel. So I'm going to declare my Excel object variable. Oh, I forgot to put my comma. And then from here, I'm going to call it a chart object. And then, as you probably guessed, it's a chart object. So now that I've done that, I need to actually create an instance of Word because by default, I don't have it open. You can look right down here at my little bar and you will see that there's no Word application. And by default, most people won't have it open. Our strategy is a little different if it's already open. So I'm going to create a new instance of Word. Create a new instance of Word. And so how I'm going to do that, I'm going to set my Word app equal to a new Word dot application. Now, by default, just because I have an instance doesn't mean I can see it. So I need to make sure I can see my application. So I'm going to go into my Word app and I'm going to go to the visible property of it and I'm going to make sure that's set to true. So now I can see my application, but it doesn't mean it's going to be the main window on my screen. I want it to be the main window on my screen. So I need to activate that window to bring it to the front. So I'm going to go to activate, and then that will call the activate method and bring my Word application to the front of my screen. So now that I've created an instance of the application, I need to create a document within that application, because if I run it right now, you'll notice something. You'll have an application, but there's no actual document in here. And so what we need to do is make sure that we can actually have a document we can work with. So I'm going to create a new Word document. So I'm going to set my Word doc variable equal to my Word app. And then I'm going to go in my Word application. There is something called a documents collection. That's just all the documents that I currently have in my application. Well, right now I don't have any documents, so there's none. But if I call the add method, I will now have one document that I can kind of play with within my Word application. So that will create my Word document. So if I run this again, I now have the application with my little document. The next thing I do want to mention, within Words, you have something called a selection. So this selection right here is where my cursor is. So if I want to reference where my cursor is, I have to reference the selection that I have within my Word application. Now, each document can have one selection. However, across all of my documents, I can only have one active selection. So because I only have one document, my only selection is my active selection. But just keep that in mind if you're working with more than one document. So now that we've done that, we're going to move on to the next step. So the goal is to copy all the charts on my single worksheet. So I've got to have a framework that will allow me to go to each one of those charts. Well, lucky for us, there's a really easy way to do this. So this is going to loop through the charts on my active sheet. That is so important to keep in mind. I am assuming that the charts you want to export is on the sheet that you currently have selected and activated within your particular workbook. If it's not, then you need to change your code a little bit. But for me, we're going to do it like this. So we're going to say for each chart object, so we're calling that variable we declared above, in my active sheet, and then every sheet has something called a chart objects collection. So those are all the chart objects within a particular worksheet. And so basically what this loop is doing is it's looping over each one of those chart objects in that group of chart objects. And then I want to go to my next chart object within my loop. Okay, so now that I'm on my chart object, we want to copy it. Now this is where I'm going to start explaining the instability that can arise in Word. It's really frustrating sometimes. So we want to copy the chart. Here's what I'm going to recommend. Never do it like that. This works sometimes and then other times it won't work. So I call it unstable. So because it's unstable, we are not going to do it. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to, I meant chart object, but regardless, what we're going to do is we're going to call our chart object, and within our chart object there's something called a chart property. Well, that's just the chart itself. And then within that there's something called the chart area property, which again is just the area of our chart that we can copy. And from here I'm going to call the copy method. Now this seems to be the most stable. This has worked, I would say 98% of the time. There have been 1 or 2 occasions where this still doesn't work. That's just the nature of the game. I wish I could tell you something a little bit differently, but unfortunately, when you're working with the clipboard, things can be unstable, so we just kind of have to deal with it sometimes. There will be occasions it might fail. It doesn't mean your script is wrong. Give it a second, maybe close it, reopen it, and try it again, and then usually it works no problem. So now that I've copied it, I need to paste it within my particular Word document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say paste the chart in the Word document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, with that selection that I currently have within my Word app, sorry, I need to put my Word app. Again, you can have multiple selections. And so if I had just used selection, it would have been referring to the Excel selection. I want to specify really what application am I talking about. I'm talking about the Word application. And so I'm going to say, okay, with that Word app selection, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the paste special. Paste special. And then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I want it to have a link because I'm going to paste it as an OLE object. And then what from this one's going to do is I'm going to set that equal to true. And then I'm going to specify the data type. And then this one is a Word. I think it's in its paste. Yeah, paste. And then it's an OLE object. So this should paste it as an OLE object. So now we've taken our chart, we've copied it, and now we've pasted it. However, just because I've pasted it, we'll notice something. So I'm going to run this really quick. Didn't work, did it? Yep, that's what I'm talking about right there. So I'm actually kind of glad this happened. So now you can start realizing that I'm not losing my sanity. Do you see how we didn't change anything, but it worked the second time? Welcome to the world of moving things between applications. This is what I'm talking about. It's just highly unstable. We can do one more trick technically to see if that fixes it within something, but well, technically it did. So it failed on the second run through. What we can do is we can pause it. So we can say, hey, call the application wait now, and then plus, and I'm just going to pause it for like, I don't know, 2 seconds. We'll do 2 seconds. This is another attempt that we can do to kind of make it a little bit more stable. So we can pause the application for 2 seconds. And let's see what happens if we do that. If we're still getting that particular error, it tends to fix it. Oh, and there's also one other thing we can do. We can actually clear the clipboard. And this is something I actually cut copy mode. Yeah, so what we can do is we can actually clear our clipboard. So if there's anything in it, we can clear it before we go to the actual next loop. These kind of methods tend to work. I mean, they're not perfect, but they are steps that we can take to kind of fix the issues if they do arise. So let me try this again and see what happens. Okay, so it worked. It just pasted it right on top of it. We'll fix that in a second. But again, as you can see now, it's highly unstable, but there are steps we can take to at least hopefully fix it. It's not going to fix all of it all the time, but what we can do is, takes at least some precautions to at least make our lives easier. And then most of the time it does work it. So, but as you kind of saw right there, it copied the chart on top of it. So I want it to copy it on the next page. Well, first I've got to add a page, and then I've got to go to that page. So I basically have to change my selection to that page. So how do I do that? Well, I need to add a new page. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in my Word app. I'm going to go into my active document, so the one that I have open. And then there's something called sections. So these are the different sections or pages within my particular Word document. Now, that's kind of a broad statement. I'll explain this in a later video because kind of finding your placement in Word can be a little bit challenging. But at this point, let's just call it a page. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a new page. And then from here, just because we've added it doesn't mean we've selected or we're on it. We want to be on it. So we want to go to the newly created page. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call my Word app again. And there's something called the selection, like we already know. And then there's a go to method. So it will go to that method. Well, there's some properties that we can set about it. And so one of them is what? Well, what do you want to do? Well, Word go to page. So that makes sense. And then basically, which page do you want to go to? Well, if I type in which, and then that, you're going to see a couple options. Word go to, and then you can see all these little different options we can go to. Well, in this case, I just want to go to the next page. And then what this will do is it will take me to the next page. So if I run this now, let's see what we get. Hopefully, we don't get any errors. That would be unfortunate. Okay, perfect. So as we can see, it is currently making our lives easier. So it added one page after it. It added sometimes a second. I can fix that in the next video, but right now it's at least putting each chart on a different page. So again, we've taken all the charts from a single worksheet. Let's move on to the entire workbook. And of course, there is something else that we have to do in order to fix stability issues. So I'm going to copy this code because it's almost identical. And then I'm going to call and change the name to a single workbook. So the first thing that we got to do is we've got to add now another outer loop. So in this case, what we're going to loop through is the worksheet. So we have to create a loop, and then we're going to have to declare a variable. So how do we do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right up here, and I'm going to declare another object variable, and this is going to be called worksheet. As you guessed, it's a worksheet object. And then what do I want to do? Well, for each worksheet in this workbook.worksheet. So I really want to explain that. Hold on, not work identity. And then I need to close my loop. So I say next worksheet. I'm going to tab that in. I'm going to put a space here and say loop through each worksheet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this up a little bit so we can see it some more. Okay, so we're going to loop through each worksheet. And then really, what is this doing? This workbook, that is referring to the workbook that this code is living in. It is currently living in the workbook called Excel to Word Working. Keep in mind, do never run this code from your personal macro workbook. It will not work because, again, that code is living in your personal macro workbook. It's probably not in the workbook that's containing the charts. So please do not run this in your personal macro workbook. It will not work because you're referring to the workbook that contains the code with this workbook. And then every workbook has a worksheets collection. And then those are all the worksheets that currently exist within a particular workbook. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this code again. And I want to show you what happens. I kind of hope the error happens because it happened to me. But knowing my luck, it's going to work perfectly. Yeah. Did it work? No! Ugh. Well, I'm going to show you it anyway because this is unfair. It didn't work for me for like the last 10 times. And of course, now it worked. It's just put it. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay, that's fine. Oh, I know why it didn't. I didn't change this. I need to specify that I'm no longer on my active worksheet. That's the one you have selected. In this case, I want to specify the one that I'm on in my loop. So I'm going to try this again and see if I get that error because it's an important error, and I don't want you guys looking at it going like, wait, what's going on? Is something broken? Did it not work again? See, this is what I'm talking about. We're not changing anything literally. So I'm going to close it again. I'm going to try it again because I really want you guys to see this specific error. It's confused me for a little bit when I was looking at it. Okay, good, good. Keep going. Yes. Okay, I think the error happened. Perfect. Yes, this is the one. So you're going to see this. Word cannot obtain the data for the whatever object link. Try to figure out a workaround for that, and I'm going like, what's going on? I don't know what this error is telling me. This is how you fix it. You just need to activate the worksheet. So you're going to go to worksheet.activate. And when you do this, it fixes the problem. It will at least fix that error. You still might get the clipboard error, but at least you're dealing with one error. So activate the next worksheet. So if I run this now, it should work. Okay, 1 chart down, 2 chart down, 3 chart down, 4 chart down. Perfect. So chart 4, 3, 2, and 1. So it took all of the charts for my entire workbook. I'm so glad these errors were happening. Thank God. So now, if you encounter them, it's not going to cause you a headache like it was causing me. So unfortunately, this is just kind of the nature of the beast. Word can be very unstable sometimes, and so we're just going to have to do some workarounds. But again, they're not too complicated. Really, all we did is we just activated the worksheet, we paused it, and then we made sure our clipboard was empty. These are some active and proactive steps that we can take in order to fix these problems. It might not work 100% of the time, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast. I will say though, when I get to my C# tutorials, I have yet to have these errors happen yet. So I think C# is a little bit more reliable. I think VBA is just outdated in some regards, and they're not actively maintaining it. So this is the consequence of having something that is not actively maintained. Errors will persist. Okay, but that does it for today's video. So again, we learned how to take multiple Excel charts and export them to Word. In our next video series, we're going to take Excel tables and export those objects to a Word document. And it's actually kind of interesting because there's different methods that we can use that will allow us to just kind of make our code a little bit cleaner and nicer. And then ideally, I'm trying to test it out as much as I can to see if I get errors and instability problems. But if I do, I'll try to develop workarounds so that way you guys can know them. And then that way you're not kind of pounding your head going like, what's going on? But yeah, that does it for today's video. If you could please make sure to like the video so that way other people can find it. I think this is a very important video because I'm pretty sure many people are experiencing the same problem. So when you like it, other people will find this video and then it will make their lives easier. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed so that way you get regular updates as we release new videos and you're staying in the loop. So thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next videos. Thanks again.